Welcome to HAI Group's monthly web series, Practitioner's View of Housing Development. Today's episode is part of an ongoing series that will be broadcast live for free once a month. Each live episode will be immediately followed by a question and answer segment with the panelists. Please be aware that we are offering the recorded version of today's show plus bonus materials exclusively on HTVN, HAI Group's online training platform. The recorded version and bonus materials are free to current subscribers to HTVN, but can be purchased by anyone who is not a subscriber. Today, we are going to be speaking about how to evaluate your properties when thinking about housing development. We will address items such as your entire portfolio versus individual properties, whether to consider bundling, and which property to begin with. Let's meet our panelists.
I'm Christine Hart. I'm the Executive Director of the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships, which is a DBA of the Brattleboro Housing Authority. I came to the authority 25 years ago when it was about to go into receivership, and I'm happy to say that it is now a high-performing housing authority in both public housing and Section 8. We've accomplished quite a bit. We have a supportive services team within the housing authority, which is, I think, remarkable for being a small entity. We have developed 2 light tech properties on the way to RAD and have worked through as a staff the destruction of 80 units in an elderly complex as a result of a flood. So we've done a lot, and it's been quite challenging but very rewarding.
Hi, I'm David A. Northern Sr., CEO of the Champaign County Housing Authority. I've been in the industry over 22 years, and it's been an exciting 22 years also. Our whole goal is to help people overcome obstacles and move along that spectrum of self-sufficiency. Currently in Champaign, we have over $89 million of construction going on in affordable housing inside and outside our county. Also, I'm the current Senior Vice President of the Public Housing Authority Directors Association. I've had the opportunity to speak at the White House for smoke-free housing, and I had a chance to visit South Africa on a housing delegation with NARO.
Hi, my name is Mike Austin, the CEO of the Macon-Bibb County Housing Authority. I've been in the housing industry for 25 years, and probably one of the biggest highlights of my career was being able to start a Section 8 home ownership program, along with moving to RAD about 5 years ago. It's been a terrific journey.
Excellent. Now, let's get underway.
You know, when we evaluated our portfolio, one of the things we did is, of course, we took a 30,000-foot view. Mm-hmm. We decided, you know, we want to maybe convert this particular property. Number one question that came before us was, if we convert this property, will it cash flow? Can we sustain it for 50 plus more years at least? And so we really started with the rents that RAD would give us, and then we worked backwards. And we kind of did a before and after approach. So we literally got out a big whiteboard, and we listed all the revenues in public housing for this particular property. And then we listed all the expenses as is with this property. And then we did a whole nother side that said post-RAD revenue and post-RAD expenses. And then at the bottom, we were looking for cash flow. We 2 things. 1, we wanted to make sure we reserved enough to maintain the property. And then 2, we wanted to make sure that we had cash flow. And you know, I think a lot of people in outside of our industry look at housing authorities and say, well, gosh, you guys can't make money. You guys, well, we have to make money. We must make money. We have to pay employees. We have to keep the lights on. We have to keep things repaired. And more importantly than any of that, we've got to preserve this housing for people who need it. And so that's really kind of the exercise we started with in, when we looked at our portfolio.
You know, I kind of looked at we looked at from the approach where what current condition our property's in, right? What can we salvage? What can we invest in? What we may want to dispose of? And so we took that type of approach first. And then we started looking at it. Our goal, we're an MTW agency, so our whole goal was to, you know, reinvest in affordable housing. We had an aggressive goal of 2,000 units by 2020. And it's not there yet, but we're moving fast in that direction. And so we had to want to look at how do we want to invest, and utilizing, you know, the flexibility of MTW, making those educated decisions around whether you sell on property, whether you know, rehabbing it, whether you just build a new replacement property, and then you have to make that decision. What properties, if I can rehab them, What do? Do I relocate everybody and do piecemeal relocations?
Yeah.
I mean piecemeal rehabbing, and so sometimes that adds to the cost. That adds to the discomfort for certain.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was a lot of thought process we had to go into before we made a determination on what direction we want to move into.
Right.
It was just so many moving parts and so many variables that we had to decide before we even start looking at the financing aspects of it.
Right.
You're
looking kind of the position, the position things. Once you kind of got that in your plan, then you look at financing and what's going to cash flow. That's a good approach.
Yeah, especially relocating people. I mean, that's a community nightmare. And so you had to have the right messaging around that and have the community buy-in. And so once we decided which properties we want to focus on, what type of focus we wanted for that particular property, whether it was bundling them together. As I said before, we looked at, we bundled, when we sold a property, we sold a property on a campus of the University of Illinois for $5 million. And we build in.
Good, that's great.
And we build in. And you know what, today you go past that property and the students living in there. They rehabbed it like that, right? We didn't have the investment to do that, but now we're building a $25 million 222 unit development with senior and flats for everybody wins. Everybody wins. And so, I mean, just looking at the evaluation process, what works best, and as I said before, we rehabbed some, we sold some, we demolished some, and we built new. So
well, we had the tropical storm Irene that certainly set the footprint for us, and we had 80 units that we had to replace. So that was first and foremost, and we're still working on that one. But we then went through the process of looking at our 4 remaining public housing and saying, what do we want to do with these? Do we want to just take them all into RAD? 2 of them, I had the total development cost analysis done about 9 or 10 years ago, and both of them failed. Now they don't fail under the RAD capital needs. Figure that out. So we know those need some substantial investment, but our strategy is, having looked at all of these things, and especially the money, get them into RAD, and then we control them, and then we can really set out a really good capital investment program for the 4 properties and move forward.
And I think you reminded me of something. I think a lot of people forget development takes a long time. And it's not something that you can do overnight. It takes years sometimes, especially in the business we're in, because we have so many moving parts. We have so many things we have to take into consideration. The community buy-in, as you mentioned, David.
Securing the financing.
The financing,
the construction pricing, all these things,
stuff,
and it takes a long time. But I think if housing authorities make a decision, look, we want to move in this direction, get the community buy-in, get their board in support of it, and then tell people to be patient, because it does take a while, and there's going to be some hiccups, of course. There's going to be some problems in development that come up that you didn't foresee a year ago. It just happens, and so you just have to be very patient and just keep at it.
Well, and I think it's the education again of the and working on the state level with the state funders. In Vermont, you don't do a job without 7 funders in it, and if you don't have a relationship with every single one of them, they're not going to know what you're trying to do, and it's really important because they're giving the money to you. You may be a housing authority, but they're investing in you, and so they want you at the table. So I think that's a really important point in looking at evaluating our properties. We have to also say what is possible in the bigger scheme of the state that we're operating in, and its funding mechanisms.
That's right.
Then we had to look at the zoning laws. The codes, right? How much are they going to require, because we invest this much in that property now. We have to bring it up to new standard codes. I mean, it's a lot to take in when we're talking about development. As you mentioned, Mike, it takes a long time. You know,
Yeah.
you apply 1 year for the low-income housing tax credit. You find out if you're awarded.
You may not get it.
You may not get it.
Yeah.
You may not get
Right.
it the first few times.
Yeah,
There's only so
Right.
much to
That's
go
true.
around. You know, and then you have to have the land secure, the property secure, depending on what you're trying to do. And then another thing I remember when we decided which way to go, whether to totally get out of public housing and completely convert to RAD. Our last conversion was this past December. And thankfully
Yes.
we're totally out.
That's
But
great.
the capacity of the staff.
Oh, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
and having the staff buy in and having them at the table when we're making these decisions,
Yeah.
because a lot of them scared. You're getting out of public housing. I mean, my job's over. No,
Right.
we just may have to repurpose, reposition what we're doing.
Right.
We have to re-educate,
Right.
so they can step up and perform, because it's a different
Different ballgame.
different
Yeah.
ballgame.
Yeah.
Totally,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially when you putting in low-income housing tax credits with it.
Well, you went through that with MTW
Oh, yeah.
too.
Yeah.
We've applied for MTW, and it was the staff was a big piece of the education in there.
Right.
The community.
Mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you got to take a holistic approach, and you have to be, pointed in terms of having that plan together.
Right.
When we're talking about utilizing our tools to redevelop or preserve affordable housing.
You know, and the other thing, you talk about education and community, tax commissioners. So you talk about zoning. So, you have a brand new property or a rehab property,
Yes.
and they see dollar signs.
Yes.
Oh, sir. Oh,
And
yes.
so there's this thing called pilot or
Right,
nonprofit,
right.
thank goodness. And so you have to, make sure that, look, this is an affordable property. Our revenues, by definition, are always capped in
Right.
affordable housing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
our expenses are not,
Yeah.
and so there's no way that a property can pay property taxes like a four-market
Right.
property. So you have
Right.
to go sometimes before commissions and help them understand that, because once they see that property,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
they want to come after
Yeah.
that tax.
At the end of the day, development, affordable housing development, RAD, low-income housing tax credits, utilizing the public-private partnership is the only avenue we have to
Yeah.
preserve and create new affordable
right.
housing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when we talked about evaluation and looking at which properties to do, being MTW, we have activities, so it's a little different. And we had to put in our MTW plan of various activities, how we plan to utilize the funding.
Interesting.
And so we have RAD, we have low-income housing tax credit development. We have a goal set aside on how many units we want to convert. We decided to convert our whole inventory in public housing to RAD. And then as relate to our non-RAD inventory, it's affordable. And we're using it in a number of different ways, whether it's permanent supportive housing or low-income housing tax credits, the various partnerships. And so we wanted to do we want to create a whole new environment around affordable housing, utilizing that flexibility of the MTW status.
Yeah.
That's a great
nice.
tool.
Yeah.
Evaluating whether to go all in at once or parcel it out. We started in RAD 5 years ago whenever the first notice came out, and we just took a couple properties. And really it was an exercise of building our confidence, getting the community used to it, educating the politicians, the mayor, and so on. And building that capacity, talking to the staff, making sure that they were on board, communicating with them to make sure that they understood it's going to take a different mindset than what we previously were used to. So, but I recommend that housing authorities, if they have never done RAD, maybe, and they don't have the capacity or they don't feel like they have the experience, maybe take their easiest property, try to do an evaluation like we've talked about, take their easiest property, go through the entire RAD process with a RAD coach, get it done, and then step back and ask themselves, okay, what more can we do? Should we tackle this next one? And I think that's a
That's a
a
good
plausible
idea.
approach. Or you can bring on consultants and try to go all in. And the great thing is you can go about it lots of different ways.
Right.
We always look at it's our worst property. Let's jump on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if it's your worst property, it's probably a challenge to
Yeah,
get
that's
the
a
deal
good
done.
That's a good thought.
And so it's going to take more money to rehab it and bring it up to the
Right.
standards for
Sure.
RAD
A lot more
conversion.
moving parts.
A lot
if it,
more.
if
Yeah.
it needs a lot of help
Yeah.
right now. So.
Yeah. And again, I think small housing authorities shouldn't be afraid of RAD or afraid of redevelopment. We can do it just as, just like anybody else. And it's a function of getting the right resources. And
Sure.
now I think there are a lot of good resources out there for housing authorities of any size. And I think that people should look at this as a way mean, to us, it's the control over our properties. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just sit there and go, let's just get control of our properties because we've had them for so long, you know, 70 years or so, and managed them for 25 years, the team that I have. And, you know, we just feel like, let us have them. And we can then figure out a plan. We know how to go forward with these. But we did a Section 18, and it drove me crazy. I mean, oh boy, I'm nerdy, but that thing was over the top. So I think you have to look at all your properties, and then you can decide. One, that's a great idea to start with an easy one and go forward. You know, the other thing that we haven't mentioned is that we've got to educate our residents, and they're very fearful of
new contracts
of this. What's going to happen? Are you going to raise my rent? You know, there's a lot that is very daunting for them. They know public housing. They've lived in it. It's very secure. And now you're going to move me to what?
What does that mean?
Well,
And I've had a lot of discussions with the residents about it, and
you have to.
It's really confusing. You know, they got tenant-based, and now you've got project-based, and then you've got public housing, and they just sit there and their eyes glass over, and they're just like, what are you doing to us?
And I think at the end of the day with residents, you're right, you've got to spend a lot of time with residents, but at the end of the day, residents, if they understand, one, by and large, the rent's not going to change. If your housing authority is going to continue to manage that property, management by and large is not going to change. And in the end, they're likely going to get a better product. And so I think you've messaged that again and again and again. And of course, RAD requires that you meet with them several times.
Exactly.
And it's just good practice to do that anyway, even if HUD's not requiring it. Because after all, this is where we are, and this is who we're serving. This is why we're here. This is our mission. And so, but I think it's again this message again that look, RAD can be complicated and it can be complex, but the bottom line is it's going to make life better for residents. It's going to preserve this housing, and everybody's going to win if it's done correctly. And we need the residents' help because, after all, they're our customers, and so we need our customers' help. But I think you're spot on. I think that they're a huge part of this whole process.
And unfortunately, we always have to go back to that same old approach, the golden rule. Who has the gold makes the rule. And we didn't make it up.
That's right.
We're working through it, you know.
That's right.
And so we have to make sure we, again, educate our elected officials. You know, we're taking an approach where we're developing outside of our county. And so individuals wondering why you're investing outside of Champaign County. And I said, well, you're right, investing is right. So it's a business. You know, so I had to break it down and explain to them on why we're investing and how HUD disinvested and how this investment brings income to benefit our clients right here in our community. And that's the only way we can, you know, overcome.
That's right. I think that's a good point. You know, RAD, you do RAD in your particular jurisdiction, but housing, as a housing authority's developers can go anywhere in the state, really anywhere in the nation if they really want to.
We are a developer.
Yeah, we are a developer.
We're becoming that.
Yeah, we're like you, David, we'll do things as much as we can in our own community, but from time to time we might have a better shot at maybe 2 counties away. And so we've developed tax credit properties in 5 other counties in the state of Georgia. And again, the bottom line is we're preserving affordable housing, and that's what our mission is. And so, but I think this is what we do is we kind of look at our properties, see, like you mentioned, David, see which ones might go quicker. You know, I liked your comment about, gosh, if you got a property that needs a ton of work, you may not want to start with that one first. Don't start with that one. You know, start with the easiest one, and then cut your teeth on it because, like you said, you bring in the toughest property first. You're bringing in investors likely. You're going to have to deal with construction pricing. You're going to have to deal with all those variables, and if you're not accustomed to that, it's hard, even for experienced developers. That's a difficult proposition. But you know, take the easy ones first, and HUD, their coaches work really well. And then make use of other housing authorities. As we talked about earlier, there's so many housing authorities out there. Network.
Strong, And I, when we developed this new building for some of the residents from the place that got flooded, I had 12 meetings with them. I had over 200 frequently asked questions.
Wow.
And we would take every question and we would answer it, and then we would send the whole 12 or 15 pages
Out
of
to everybody.
responses to every resident. And while it was quite an exercise, it really set a good precedent.
Absolutely.
So people felt like, okay, they are going to tell us
You're building
what's
the trust.
going on.
You're building the trust.
And we even have things in the building that we have named after some of the residents because they
were
you've
so
got to
engaged.
get that laundry right,
Super. That is-
Transparency is important.
Yeah,
Truly
yeah.
important.
And I think once you've done that, again, pick the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have a success, have a lot of communication with your residents and your community, and then you can go forward
Yeah.
And market that success.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Go public, as they
Sure.
call
That's
it.
right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
Don't be shy.
No,
Yeah.
don't be shy. We should be proud of this.
Exactly.
Exactly.
This is great stuff, and not everybody can do it.
No.
In fact, only housing authorities can do RAD proper, as I call it.
Yeah.
Some of the private owners can do a different component of RAD on
Right.
on a conversion, but the main portion of RAD can only be done by housing authorities. So, it's a great thing. So,
And we have to understand we have the richest resources. We have that ability to do RAD.
Yeah.
We have vouchers to utilize, and we have some of the most valuable land that we already have
That's right.
and operate.
Yeah.
That's
So-
right.
Super.
We've got the land, and you look at any development, and what's the first thing they say? Do you have site control?
Control.
Yeah,
That's,
that's
Yeah.
first
And
thing.
how much is that going to cost you to get site
Yeah.
control? And,
Yeah.
uh,
And everywhere you go is different. I've worked for 4 different housing authorities in 3 different states.
Oh,
so,
great.
And everywhere development has been different.
Different laws.
Different laws,
Yeah.
different tools, different process that we have to go through in order to bring a deal to the table and to fruition. Philadelphia was a challenge. Indiana was a challenge.
Right.
Illinois was a challenge. Everywhere is a challenge.
It's a
But at
challenge.
the
It's a
end of
different
it,
set of challenges.
it's
Just
a different set
different,
of
yeah.
challenges,
Yeah.
and you have to, equip yourself to be prepared for that.
So, we're looking at bundling right now. When we first got into RAD all those years ago, bundling was not a resource you could use or an option that you could pick. So we didn't know what that meant, and so we went through the exercise of which properties can we do now and all that kind of stuff, and either do all of one or none of any and type of thing. But now with the latest revisions, HUD is making it a lot easier, I think, to pick and choose what you can do and what you can't do, bundle things together, and really I think the exercise you go through is what makes sense for the community, for the housing authority, for the residents, and when you try to bundle. So I think it's a terrific exercise, and I'm glad that it's available. We're going through it right now. So.
We used it when we did, demo disposition.
Yeah.
And we tied a lot of the scatter site units that we wanted to get rid of to the application. So with the building we sold, and so that was helpful. I had an experience in Lake County, Illinois, where we first had RAD chaps. When it first came out, we got 2 chaps, and we wanted to do our scatter site units. And that's what we were doing. We were bundling together 2 projects. We created 2 different projects, but they were spread it throughout the county.
Yeah.
And our state financing agency wasn't comfortable. They said, well, can you put like just 8 of them close together?
Right.
It didn't work.
Interesting.
The money don't work, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
so we had to look at so many ways to get it done, and we ended up backing out of it. So now, if bundling would have been there at the beginning, it would have been a lot easier for us to, bring that project to fruition.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we when we did this new project for the flooded property, it was a long time ago. It was 2012, 2013, and the HUD advice was don't go RAD, go straight. Section 18 and do a low-income housing tax credit. They just said RAD is not ready for that kind of, it's not Showtime ready. So I think now it would be.
So that was
and
2012?
That's the bundling.
12, 13, yeah.
13, yeah.
And our
Yeah,
field
so-
office was trying to push us toward RAD.
Sure, yeah.
Well,
Same with
they
you.
wanted us
Yeah.
to do RAD, but this was so complicated
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
with
with the-
Section
with the
18.
FEMA.
and FEMA's
Sure.
in
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
everybody's in it, and they just said, no, don't do RAD.
And
Just make it easier.
And I think the main thing with bundling is getting the investors or the funders comfortable with how you're going to manage it.
Exactly.
And you know,
Right.
right now, you think about your portfolio. If you're just public housing, well, your housing is where it is, and you're managing it where it is right now.
Right.
So if you convert to RAD and you can show your funders or investors that, look, I can still manage these properties. One's over here
Yeah.
on the south side of town, and the
Mm-hmm.
other one's on the north side of town. We've been managing these properties for 35 years now, so
That don't
why
change.
can't, that's not going
Right.
to change. That's right. So here's our plan. This is how we will continue to manage those
Right.
properties, even if we convert to RAD, some of them, not all of them, parts of them. And I think that's the key, is making people comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Because we do it already.
Yeah.
Right.
It goes right back to education. Any housing authorities that's really considering, doing RAD, when they do their evaluation of their properties and decide which units or which developments or projects to go after, they also have to continually educate. So bundling comes with that. It's new to housing authorities, so you got to educate yourself, your staff, the community. But it's a simple approach
It
is.
if you look at it.
It
Well,
is.
and I think the financial aspects
Yeah.
of bundling are really critical.
That makes sense.
You know,
If it works, it makes
yeah,
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives us another option that we didn't have before. But again, it's a really important, I mean, it always is the
Right.
key to making these projects work. But I think bundling helps mix and match that we might not have done before.
Right, and even without RAD, you talked about bundling. Maybe you've got properties, maybe RAD won't work, but you can get a tax credit. You can,
Yep.
there's
Right.
so many more resources available today, demo dispo and a tax credit, vouchers, as
Yep.
you mentioned. We have that great asset of vouchers.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so bundling really takes on a different approach. If you're not including RAD, you can just do it lots of different ways. And working outside of your county, after all, we're property managers, right? And you guys, everybody knows that there's property managers who have property thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
And
I mean, yeah,
all
regional
that-
property
regional-
managers.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, why should housing authorities be any different?
Right.
So, after all, when it boils right down to it, we are property managers. And so yeah, this whole notion of bundling and mixing and matching, I think the housing authorities across the nation are better suited, really, to do it than anybody else is, because we've been doing it for years and years.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank our panelists for sharing their insights. We hope you were able to take some things away from the conversation that you can use in your day-to-day. Please be on the lookout for other episodes as part of this web series, Practitioners' View of Housing Development, on HTVN, HAI Group's online training platform. Have a wonderful rest of your day.